Good morning, and I'd like to say that I come here both as chancellor but also as a professor of law, and these are my colleagues. I'm so happy to be here this morning with them. One of the most prestigious honors any university can bestow is an honorary degree, a degree which is conferred honoris causa, or for the sake of honor. Through this public action, Rutgers acknowledges individuals whose exceptional achievements support the ideals of the university and serve as an example for our students, our alumni, and society. I am pleased to introduce a distinguished individual who will receive an honorary degree at this ceremony. A detailed accounting of her accomplishments can be found in your commencement program, and I urge you to read them. Professor Anita Hill, a pioneering leader in the struggle for equity and against sexual harassment, is known across this nation for the enduring impact of her work. And it gives me great pleasure, therefore, to invite Professor Hill to join me at the podium to receive an honorary Doctors of Laws degree. So you're going to stand right there. Our citation reads, "As an advocate for a just and equitable society, you are respected for your courage to stand up for the rights of every American citizen and your commitment to doing so with unwavering moral integrity. For decades, you have been one of our nation's most powerful voices, promoting equality and addressing acts of discrimination. Your courage to stand against sexual harassment and assault remains inspirational for all of us." Your career is a living testament to the American ideal of equity, particularly the importance of equal rights for women. In recent years, you have expanded your focus to include opportunities for women in STEM and other fields. Your own words illuminate your stature as a role model for graduating students to accept their new roles as civic leaders who will work to improve their communities and world. You have said, and I quote, "I did what my conscience told me to do, and you can't fail if you do that," end of quote. And more recently, you have observed, and I quote, "Despite a generation growing up hearing that sexual harassment is unacceptable, it clearly remains a plague," end of quote. In the wake of surging national crisis regarding sexual harassment in 2017, you took the lead in a campaign against sexual abuse in the media and entertainment industries by heading up the Commission on Sexual Harassment and Advancing Equality in the Workplace. As a professor at Brandeis University, you continue to share your vision and insights into our nation's laws and policies with your students. Your own journey as a legal scholar began upon your graduation from Yale Law School. You went on to hold positions at the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights and later the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. In 1989, you became the first African American to be tenured at the University of Oklahoma College of Law. Your 1991 testimony before the United States Senate Judiciary Committee ignited the national conversation about sexual harassment that continues to command attention a quarter century later, sadly. In your teaching, your public commentary, your books, and your writings, you have become a national symbol for the power of courageous refusal to stay silent when confronted with discrimination and harassment. Your life's experiences and work are inspiring and empowering, and it will continue to empower Americans, and particularly for our students. Now, therefore, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the boards of governors and trustees of Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, I am pleased to honor upon you, honoris causa, the degree of Doctor of Laws with all the rights, privileges, and immunities appertaining thereunto here and elsewhere. Congratulations.
Well, got me. Good afternoon, or is it morning still? It's hard. I want to thank Chancellor Haddon. You know, I knew her as professor. We have had a 3-decade-long relationship. And I could not be more proud of the work that she has done and is doing in leading this university. So can I just get a round of applause for her? I want to thank the boards of trustees, Deans Chen and Cahill, for the singular honor and recognition, an honorary degree, and the opportunity to address this gathering. I will stand a little taller every day because of this. I will also do my very best to live up to the ideals of this university and the promises of the class of 2018. Now, I know what it felt to get this honorary degree, and I know that you all are just bursting to get yours as well. But I also noticed that you're a little subdued. I just can't imagine that at some point you're just not gonna let it all out. So I'm just gonna give you a moment now to start to let it all out. Congratulations, class of 2018. I am one of you. You did what you set out to do, leave Rutgers with a degree in your hand. And that is not anything that any of us can take for granted. We've already talked about how you've been assisted and guided by family, friends, partners, staff, as well as faculty. Because it is true, no one gets here to this moment that you are in alone. So I want to thank you for letting me be a part of it and sharing this day. And I also want to recognize for a moment that I know that many of you have had challenges coming to this day. But you stuck with it, you stood the course, and here we are. And I am so proud to be part of it. Now, I've mentioned that nobody gets here alone, but I also want to say that this day is uniquely yours. In the years to come, you're going to look back at this experience of having lived and learned together, having graduated together, and you're going to look back with it not just in terms of the isolation of experience, but also you're going to look back in the context of what has been going on in the world during this time, especially in the law. From the legalization of same-sex marriage to the rise in hate crimes, from the end of the Obama era to the election of Donald Trump and the March on Washington, these will shape how you view your law school days. It also will shape how you see your country and perhaps even how you see your work in the world. I hope it does. It's increasingly hard, though, to name the defining features of the United States. And perhaps the kindest word that I can think of today, or the calmest word to describe where the times are, is uncertain. You have received your education in a time of uncertainty, not to mention a time of violence and terrorism to too many of your peers and even younger students on campus. So I know it's hard to live, and it's hard to study. It's hard to concentrate in the middle of uncertainty. As a teacher, as a woman who could, honestly, for some of you, be your grandmother, I am so proud of what you've done. And I want to offer you just a few words in the minutes that I have to speak to try, I think, as someone who has lived through uncertain times in the past, to give you a little counsel on what we will need to confront this uncertainty in a positive and meaningful way. First, I want to talk about bravery. Second, and I've heard this word used more than once today, community. And finally, I want to talk about a lasting commitment to positive change. Now, when I was sitting where you were now, so many years ago, Harriet Tubman was my hashtag hero. It was before hashtags, of course. But I believe that if I had been born in 1825, I would have been a conductor on the Underground Railroad. I would have served as a nurse in the Union Army. And in my later years, I would have been an outspoken advocate for women's suffrage. But since I was born in the middle of the 20th century, the challenges that I faced were not the monumental challenges that Harriet Tubman endured. I could never, ever be Harriet Tubman, but I could, as I grew older, realize I could honor her by showing in my own time a sliver of the courage and commitment to freedom that she showed in hers. And I did my very best to do so in 1991, and I have continued to do so every day since. Courage is not something that happens once in our lifetimes. It's something that we live and exhibit in the way we live our lives every day. And I will say about Harriet Tubman, I haven't lost her as a hero. She is still my hero, and I believe she deserves to be on that $20 bill sooner rather than later, to be there and remind us all, this is what courage looks like. Harriet Tubman, a freedom fighter. But I also recognize that you too, in your own ways, in these last few years, have become freedom fighters. You've witnessed others as well. You've witnessed courageous individuals in college campuses who have stepped up to say, this is who I love and who I should be able to marry. And fortunately, the courts agreed. Others have declared that I am not the gender that was assigned to me at birth, and for now, we don't know what the legal outcome of their challenges will be. In the last few years, students of color have demanded greater inclusion and called for the removal of relics that symbolize our racist history, and that issue has not been settled. And in the same vein, students of all genders have claimed something very basic. So basic, it's hard to believe that it's even debatable, but the right to have an education free from sexual violence. We all deserve that. But all of these acts, surprisingly, have taken courage. In an age of harsh and sometimes immediate backlash that can be delivered nearly instantly and anonymously online with a click of the mouse, challenging the status quo is still risky. So I want you to think about the courage that you have witnessed in your time, and think about what it has meant to your life. Some of you have become allies to those who have struggled for basic human dignity. There are movements across the country that have let the world know that campuses should be safe for all, whether it's hashtag Sanctuary Campus that demands safety for all workers and students, regardless of their immigration status, or the Me Too movement that declares that we will not be silent again about sexual predation. I applaud your support for these efforts. You, too, fight sexual assault and violence by being an ally. You have been brave in the face of your own tragedies and your own challenges. And importantly, you have absorbed the education you have received here to make you not only brave, but also intensely capable of combating bias and discrimination throughout society. And for those of you who have not found your call to action, your time to be courageous will come. And I hope that you will look back on these days and your time here to see the examples that you have witnessed, and you will know when and how to answer your call. Uncertainty prevails only if it can make cowards of us all. And we can defeat uncertainty if we boldly stand for justice and fairness. So, how did we get to this moment? We are in a moment, interestingly, of a number of social movements. I've referred to a couple of them. And some of you are going to say to me, well, we got to this moment because of Twitter, right? How many of you are on Twitter, have followed Twitter? Nobody? Good. Some people will say it's Instagram that got us to this moment, the Me Too moment. Trust me, this is a profound moment in our time. But I don't believe we got here because of social networks or the platforms. I believe we got here because of our enduring longing for community, especially in uncertain times. In another uncertain time, Martin Luther King penned his letter from a Birmingham jail, and his words that are most often quoted are the following: "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." But Dr. King goes on to remind us of the inescapability of community when he says, "We are caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." So Rutgers class of 2018, of course, because you are graduating together, you learn together, you are tied in a network of mutuality. But I would also say that you are tied to those who, through no circumstances and no fault of their own, could not make it to this day. And I think back, I know it's a day for us to be joyful and to celebrate, but I also think it's important for us to not only think about the geese that are flying away, but also to think about some of the people who you know who are capable and competent and who could be here, who could be lawyers going out to practice law in whatever fields they choose, but who are unable to be here because of circumstances in their lives that did not go their way and allow this outcome. So as you leave today, as you're thinking about your classmates in this new community that you have become involved in, whether as classmates or alums, I also want you to think about how we can start to expand opportunity to make sure that more capable and competent people are in our ranks, receive the education that they can and would use if they had the opportunity. Think about the disparities that still exist in this country. The disparities that can be attributed to race, gender, sex, sexual identity. Think about what opening up an education to all would do to eliminate that. Think about enlarging the community and not shrinking the community down to a few people who are in your class status. I want you to think boldly, not only about your own courage, but think about how you can embrace a broad definition of community. Who gets in? How do we open the doors for more? A better inclusive world. I love the idea that Rutgers University has been practicing inclusion. And you have been the beneficiaries of that, all of you. Not just the few who you think might not have gotten in but for this program, but all of you have benefited from the inclusion at Rutgers. Think about how that should transfer to your lives when you leave here and you go into your practice. So what happens now? I said I was going to talk about commitment to long-term change. Because, we can think of the movements now, and we can think that, with so much energy, they're not going to last forever. Movements are important, but so are the efforts that it will take to enshrine the ideals of movements. What happens now? I would say we will never be the same after the Me Too movement, after such revelations of sexual violence. We can never, as a society, ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist. We can't be the same as we were before, and we certainly can't go backwards when we know that so many people are hurting and suffering. So how do we move forward? How does the ideals of the movement, how do they become our destiny? Not just something we talk about and celebrate on Twitter. I believe that no one is better equipped to make those ideals a reality than you are as trained lawyers. Now, I will just remind you, I mentioned Dr. Martin Luther King earlier, in the words from a Birmingham jail, creating the movement in 1963. I would remind you that following that letter from a Birmingham jail, Dr. King developed a strategy that led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the Fair Housing Act of 1968. We will need to see legislation passed that puts safety of individuals first, that makes clear the right to live and work and be educated in safe environments. And you, with your skills and your knowledge and your determination, having lived through this moment, are in prime positions to make sure that that legislation gets introduced and gets passed. Now, some of you will not be a part of this next phase, and I know that some of you will be thinking that you may have some time for social justice, but mostly you just have to earn enough money to live and to pay off your student debts. You're fortunate because here, the education is not quite as expensive as some of your peer schools. But I hear you about debt. And I just want to share with you just a brief story. When I was at my college graduation, my mother gave me a set of luggage. She gave me a set of luggage that was going to replace a set of hand-me-down luggage that I had received when I graduated from high school. I received it from a family friend. So my mother's gift was this blue Samsonite luggage that is hard and impractical. It doesn't look like anything you have now, but it had my initials on it. And my mother had saved S&H green stamps for over 4 years to get it. Now, how many of you don't even know what S&H green stamps are? Google it. That's why we have Google now. But more than a place to carry my clothes, the luggage represented her aspirations for me. She knew that my life was not going to be her life. But she wanted me to have my own tools, and knowing that I would go my own way, but also hoping that I would take with me something of what it meant to be a member of a family of subsistence farmers. And I still have both the hand-me-down set of luggage from our family friend and the blue Samsonite luggage that my mother gave me. Together, they really do, for me, represents the tools that I have to go out in the world and to be myself. Now, today, you're going to get a diploma. And in many ways, it's going to look like all of the other diplomas, except it's going to have your name on it. The diploma will reflect the relationships and experiences that you have shared here and have shared with the world. But in the end, you will have to decide what that parchment paper means in your life and in your career. The JD you will get will be what you make of it. And no two of you will get exactly the same from it. And that's the beauty of it, because no two of you were alike when you came to get it. Most of you are not going to go into careers in social justice, and it is sad to me that most people can't afford to. But I want you to promise me and your classmates that you will make a commitment to social justice part of whatever work or careers you enter. And you can do that. It doesn't have to be all of your career, but there's always something that you can do in your own workplaces, no matter what you call yourself, whether you're a prosecutor or a defense attorney, whether you're a law professor or a government lawyer or a general counsel. You can make social justice part of your work, and you have learned to do that through your experience here at Rutgers. So I would just say to you, in closing, I'm going to ask for promises. I know we all ask for promises. But I don't have any way of checking up to see if you keep them, so. But I will ask you this. Promise me, whether in times of certainty and clarity or in times of chaos, that you will be your bravest self, the bravest self that you can be, to confront the challenges of the world and to confront your own challenges. When uncertain times call, promise me that you will embrace community and not division. And promise me, finally, that you will live with a commitment to equal justice under the law today and throughout your entire lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hill, for your inspiring words and your inspiring example.